Florida Credit Union, and you'll not only have a great credit card, but you'll have the support and personal touch that the big banks, well, can't touch. Florida Credit Union, connecting your money to your life. Federally insured by the NCUA.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Monday morning. And let me fix the microphone so it's a little bit hot in here. There we go.
Okay.
Hot microphone.
Hot.
Not hot heat-wise. We've got a hot book here right now, though.
Yeah.
It is called A Nobody for Everybody in 2016. The front cover shows a handsome young man, and inside the book, some very, very, very profound thinking about what to do to make this country, I was going to say better, but I think, let me think this, a better way to say this, make this country more respected. Be respected as we once were. Do you think we're less respected around the world?
Yes, I do.
Our next guest thinks so, and many people. I don't travel very far out of the studio, so I don't know. But
we do go a little ways.
So Scott Smith is on the phone. He wrote a book called A Nobody for Everybody in 2016. My Financial Freedom Plan for America, and Why Run a 21st Century Economy on a 19th Century Operating System. So far, so good, right? And so far, you've probably picked up on the fact that he's, with that title alone, running for the presidency of the United States. When you first hear that somebody wants to do that and you've never heard of them, you think, well, fat chance. But I think he has a chance. If you give him a chance. And here's the thing. And I thought about this. He could explain his idea in the time it took to take a taxi cab ride to the point where the taxi cab driver got it. He understood it. And it's the kind of thing where you say, how come nobody thought of this before? Scott Smith is not only a presidential hopeful. I don't think he's political at all. He's a presidential hopeful. He's a serial entrepreneur. I love that, the word serial in front of it. And I don't mean he invented more than one type of Cocoa Puffs.
No, or a killer.
Right. He's an early pioneer in structured finance. He's the founder of Kids Magazine, the co-founder and board member of 2 nationally ranked charter schools in Colorado. He's the developer of a patent portfolio of financial structures that increases the yield on investments in private equity funds. There's your clue that he might know something about money.
Yep.
And again, the book is called A Nobody for Everybody in 2016. Possibly speaking to the next president of the United States, Scott Smith. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Good. Where are you?
Thank you for such a nice intro.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm in Boulder, Colorado right now.
So we need a president from Colorado. Have we had a president from Colorado yet?
No, I don't think we have.
See, I think every state should have their chance. You know, Arkansas has had their chance. So Mike Huckabee is done. Okay, we already had one from Arkansas.
That's right.
So when it comes to Wyoming's turn, we'll have to pick one of the 5 guys.
Yeah, I know. That's going to be slim pickings, but anyway. Yeah, you have some ideas in the book that it's like, okay, to be honest with you, I'm always like, oh gosh, am I going to understand this? Because it's always over my head. But this isn't over my head, and it makes sense to me.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I get. I mean, the biggest mystery for me, and then for other people who actually read it and spend some time, everybody comes back and says, wait, why are we not already doing this? This is just so simple and so powerful. Why haven't I heard this from anyone else before? And they are novel, but they're not complicated. And the only thing I would say about that is I really did struggle with the issues for maybe 10, 12 years before finally hitting on this. And once I hit on it, I'm like, holy mackerel, this actually would work.
Wow.
You know? So I guess it's not obvious until you hear it.
So can you share, for the audience's sake, what you're talking about? And then I want to take it from there, because I want them to know that it's not just about the finances.
Oh, right. Yeah. So it's basically, the theme is the 21st century crept up on us with technology and everything we have, but our financial systems, we inherited them from the 19th century, and we continue to tax income. And what happens is you have a fight between liberals and conservatives about how much do we tax in income and whose income do we tax, and nobody's ever stepped back and said, wait a minute, there are other things to tax, and financial settlements are the category I picked. And the remarkable thing about a financial settlement, if you actually put numbers on it, what you're trying to do is get $4 trillion for government spending. Now, if you take everybody's income, put it all in one bucket, that's 15 trillion. Pretty big. 4 is a pretty big chunk of 15. Right next to us is another tank called financial settlements with 4,500 trillion in it.
Wow.
All you'd have to take is, 300 times the amount of income. In other words, for every $100,000 in income you earn in your life that you're taxed on, there are $30 million of financial settlements going on that are totally untouched. So instead of paying a tax rate of 20, 25, 35%, depending on what bracket you're in, you would end up with a financial settlements tax. You would end up paying just 1/10 of 1%, a mind-boggling number. So in other words, if you're making $100,000 today, you're being taxed somewhere around $25,000. With a financial settlements tax, you'd be taxed $100, and not only would that balance the budget, it would actually produce a surplus of about $500 billion. So you no longer have to hear Congress fighting about shutting down the government for lack of money. They'd actually have a surplus.
And that would be the end of income tax?
And that's the end of income tax. It's also the end of Social Security taxes and Medicare taxes and inheritance taxes and capital gains. You don't need any of those anymore.
But so let's take these one at a time. So if I go, let me just make sure I understand this. Let me just say what I was thinking, but then correct anything I've got wrong. What I was thinking is that when settlement taxes are targeted, then you're going to have lawyers fighting that because they don't, or that what they'll do is they'll ask for more from a jury, for example.
Well,
right?
So let's look at what I actually mean by financial settlement, because you're looking at legal settlements, and when you receive money from that is a financial settlement. But financial settlement really means any time money moves around. When I said there are 4,500 trillion in financial settlement.
Yeah. Maybe that's the part we need to understand.
Yep, 900 trillion of that are just brand new deposits made in banks each year. So, when you pay the grocery store and they deposit that money, financial settlement. When you get your paycheck, it's a financial settlement. And so it's kind of the way you think of it is think of the water cycle, and think of rainfall as being government spending and evaporation as the financial settlements. I mean, the movement of water, the oceans, the lakes, the water in the field, that's the financial settlements. And so the tax on it is evaporation. So in other words, when you're holding a glass of water, you're doing your fair share to provide for all the rainfall in the world with the water that's evaporating from your glass. But it's like infinitesimal. It doesn't impact your glass. You don't sit there and look at your glass and go, whoa, a third of it's gone, like you do with income taxes.
Right.
You barely know it. And so a financial settlements tax is just like evaporation. 1/10 of 1% is a tiny amount. When you deposit $1,000 in the bank, if somebody gave you a check for $1,000, when you deposit that, $1 of it will go away with a financial settlements tax. And that's what you have taxed instead of your income.
I see. Okay, so they're
much lighter.
So small. Theoretically, I guess I'll say that, or hypothetically, nobody would challenge it. There would be no lawsuits saying, "I don't want this because here's why." I mean, it sounds like you've already figured it out. You can already illustrate this.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if this works here,
Yeah.
it would work everywhere. It would work in Europe. It would work for the situation they're having right now with Greece.
Mm-hmm.
It would work in large measure. It works best for our country because the amount of financial settlements and movement of money that goes on in our country, it does dwarf the other nations. We just have a very robust Wall Street financial securities system, and that movement of money is greater here, so we can take advantage. But Europe would work very well for Europe because they've got a very robust securities market over there too. You're right. You get right to the, I read the paper and I'm reading about Greece, I'm reading what they're going through, and I'm like, oh my word, there's another way to do it. But and this is the way it always works, the old-fashioned way eventually becomes unacceptable, archaic, cumbersome, it doesn't work.
Right.
Can you imagine if we still had horses and carriages today and we're trying to run our country with 315 million people and that many horses?
A lot of horse poop.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
The environmentalists would have a whole different problem, wouldn't they?
Do you know that was the problem that was in the greatest discussion in New York City before the car came around?
Right. I remember.
It was becoming a disaster.
I don't mean I remember it as if I was there. I mean, I remember reading about it, yeah.
Right, me too. I wasn't there, but I read about it.
All right, let me...
at that stage you're saying, what are we going to do? Well, nobody's conceiving. Well, don't worry, there's going to be an internal combustion engine, and cars will come along, and this won't be a problem anymore.
We'll have a different problem.
This is the type of... Yeah, this is a new solution. It's like taxing income's becoming a problem. It's just not working out.
So when we come back, Scott, we have to take a little break. When we come back, I want to ask you that if we did this, let's look to the future as if we do this, would we still have to put, to rein in, so to speak, the spending habits of our elected officials? Because I've always thought that $4 trillion amount, or whatever it is that we spend every year, is not necessary, that we've got a lot of unnecessary spending, not just nationally, but locally as well. So we, and speaking of locally, I wonder if this would work at a local level. Is there enough evaporation here? So we'll take a break.
I'll speak to that when we get back.
Okay,
yeah.
So let's take a break and we'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. A few heavy thunderstorms around this afternoon. Otherwise, partly sunny skies. The afternoon's high in the low to mid 90s. Mostly cloudy skies tonight, low nearing 75. Partly sunny skies with a shower or a thunderstorm around. Tuesday's high close to 90. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm Michael Stack.
Get it for less at the DIY Home Center outlet. Get top quality real wood cabinets the same or less than the big box stores are selling the cheap stuff. And that's not all. Drywall screws big box stores are $6.47 a pound. At DIY, only $4.99. Plus, DIY has the largest selection of mobile home parts and accessories anywhere. From carpet to doors, get the DIY supplies you need for less. The DIY Home Center outlet. We are your building material closeout store. 2191 Northwest 10th Street, just 2 miles east of I-75.
Hi, I'm Seth with AA Lock, Dock, and Security. Have you ever thought about the locks or security on your house or business? Have you ever wondered why the keys to your new car cost so much? Well, at AA Lock, Dock, and Security, we can help with securing your valuables. We can even replace those expensive transponder keys. We can give you the knowledge that no one else will. Call AA Lock, Dock, and Security at 867-1965. That's 867-1965.
La Famiglia Pizzeria has moved into Ocala. Stop by today at 2504 Southeast 17th Street and see for yourself what everyone is talking about.
Awesome place. I never get pizza anywhere else.
Great New York style pizza and dishes.
Best pizza in Ocala.
One trip and you'll agree, La Famiglia Pizzeria is the best. La Famiglia Pizzeria. Stop by for a pizza that you'll love or call in and order yours for pickup. 352-245-2419. La Famiglia Pizzeria.
All All right, 11 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Scott Smith is on the phone. He's the author of a book called A Nobody for Everybody in 2016, and I understand there's a chapter or two that will be added to the book in the near future.
Yes.
And Scott is an independent candidate for the presidency. Scott, what have you done so far to be an official candidate? Did you file the paperwork, or is that still to come?
No, I filed the paperwork. This is the very beginning of the campaign. I spent the last couple of years actually building a network of support and building the book and learning how to articulate the ideas in ways that are uplifting and that people can understand. And we're just starting the campaign. We're going to spend, we'll do about 100 radio talk shows like this over the next 6 weeks. And then in September, we begin to ease into TV talk shows as well. So our focus will be on radio and TV, and then print following that and social media behind that.
Wow.
That's our plan.
And as an independent candidate, is there a party you're associated with, or no? It's just you?
No, that's well, the nice thing about being an independent is that I can spend this fall building up my name, and then when the presidential primaries begin, I will not be battling against other Republicans or other Democrats. I'll just be on the road saying, hey, I will be on the ballot, and here's my plan, and so my entire strategy is to be very nonpartisan. I think that all of the solutions I'm proposing equally appeal to conservatives and liberals, and not just moderates. I'm talking about, I get very right-wing people who are solidly behind this, and then Boulder, Colorado is a very liberal place, and the liberals here will read it and they'll say, we should do this. How do you get the conservatives on board? And I said, are you kidding? That's what a conservative says when they read it. How do you get the liberals on board?
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's a powerful platform.
Scott, a president obviously handles more than just the financial aspects of the country, or oversees it. He doesn't really handle it; he oversees it. And obviously, with your knowledge of this, if you were overseeing it, it would probably fall together. And as long as there wasn't a whole lot of resistance from Congress, you could make it happen. But what about the other things that a president has to deal with, like the infrastructure? Does money solve every problem? The defense of the country, our foreign relations, especially with the troubling parts of the world, like North Korea and ISIS, etc.
Yeah. So the way I look at that is, I'm fond of saying, and I don't mean to minimize the situation, but I'm fond of saying that foreign affairs are financial affairs first and foremost. And the way I look at foreign affairs, you attract more flies with honey than with vinegar. When you're doing business with other nations, you tend to develop relationships that are more powerful and more uplifting. I'd say China's a great example of that. I'm old enough that I remember when China was so taboo. I mean, it was illegal to go there. Doing business with them was absolutely illegal. Our greatest fear was they were going to outright attack us. What really brought that down, those barriers down, is doing business. It wasn't negotiating. It wasn't trying to see eye to eye. It was beginning to discover that, hey, there's something in it for me and there's something in it for you. If we work together, we both turn out to be better off. That's a little idealistic. I think that is a core policy that works for most of the world. You have other issues in which ISIS, you're not going to be able to go do business with ISIS.
No.
They are definitely at odds with us.
Okay, but regarding money, I mean, there's a common consensus that ISIS could be defeated if we could somehow get tie their money up or something. Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with oil wells that they stole at gunpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. No, I do agree that the best way to defeat ISIS is to be able to remove the economics that they do have. And I don't think it would be that hard. And, we're beginning to see shifts in the way warfare is conducted. It's moving more towards cyber warfare. It is moving more towards bank accounts. We are starting to get smarter in that area. So money is a core element that if you're smart about it, you can be very strategic in how you handle relationships.
I like how you have God in your life, and in the new chapter you gave us that you believe that God has, and your quote, purposefully given us challenges to help us grow, that he's not wringing his hands or abandoning us.
Yeah, I do feel that very firmly. I think that one of the primary issues that we have is that people wring their hands. They see the things going on and they think, oh my word, the world is falling apart, and they become angry and they become critical and they become judgmental, and it just deepens the mess. If we sit back and really take faith that the Lord is in charge, and we look at, even in our personal lives, whenever you look at a challenge come along, instead of wringing your hands and just being angry about it, if you step back and say, what is there for me to learn in this? And what's the point of this? Then you can begin to see things in a new light. And in that new light, you'll actually be brought a solution that is very positive and helps you grow. That's the case for our nation.
The nation of Australia recently passed some legislation that greatly restricts the ownership of guns in that country. The NRA said it was the biggest mistake Australia ever made. But now, after it's been in place for a while, the statistics are showing that there are fewer gun-related crimes in Australia, and they're claiming it's a victory by putting gun control. That's giving some talking points to the anti-gun people in this country, and a lot of people are looking at what Australia is doing, saying we should do the same thing. The question one of the questions that should be presented to every presidential candidate is: would you want us to follow suit after the role model that Australia has just done?
Well, I don't really think that percentage of gun ownership really has to do anything with it. We could restrict guns severely, or we could just start handing them out, and we'd still have a very high rate of violence in our country. It is something we have to look at seriously and say, why do we have such a high murder rate? Why do we have the incidences occurring, such as happened in Charleston? And I think it really does come down to the fact that we are doing what the scriptures say we should not do. We are judging each other. We're very critical to each other. And when we are in a stage that we are having this criticality, between the parties even, the result is the mayhem that we see. And if we can move back to a nation that begins to have tolerance for each other's views and begin to respect each other as brothers and sisters, then we can move into a stage where violence will go down.
Well, I like the way you think. I like the way you answered the question. It was a great answer. Well, you are a smart, deep thinking, and gentle speaking man. That's kind of some nice traits right there. I like the fact that you believe and have faith in God. Obviously, you know your stuff when it comes to money. I hope somebody listens. Hope somebody out there is listening. Nice to get to know you. Robin said you have some family or had some time in Ocala?
Yes. My family has some property in Ocala, and I'm there a couple times every year. I grew up in Miami, Florida, so Florida is my home state.
All right.
And I split my time now between Colorado and Florida. I kind of have the best of all worlds, I'd say.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Well, everybody keep your eye out for the name Scott Smith. He's the name that right now you don't know him, but he will, because of this interview and other interviews and then the TV campaign that he's going to do, he is going to be somebody to consider for the presidency in 2016. We've got a year and a few months away before we make that decision. So, Scott, keep doing what you're doing. I like the message. I sure hope everybody else is listening to it. I have a copy of Scott's book. If you want the copy that he sent me, call me, and I'll put your name on it. The rest of us have to go buy it. Scott, we got 45 seconds. Do you have a website?
I do. It's 2016.com.
Easy enough. Easy name, Scott Smith.
Yeah.
It's an American name.
Mr.
It is.
Yeah, Mr. Smith goes to Washington, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Scott, thank you for being on the air with us. Good luck with what you're doing, and
thank you.
And once you go to TV, don't forget radio. Come back, okay?
Well, I believe in radio.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Thank you so much.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. Negotiations at a sensitive stage. There's been progress in talks to limit Iran's nuclear program, but U.S. officials say there are still things to resolve.
The Iranian side, they say they don't want to extend these talks any further. The counselor with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Iran tweeted earlier today, quote,